As we learn more tonight about the president's plan to target ISIS, there's word this morning that part of his strategy could include a plan to train and possibly arm moderate rebels in Syria. Let's talk about that. CNN military analyst and Lieutenant General Mark Hertling joins me now. Good morning, sir.
Hey, good morning, Carol. How are you?
I'm pretty good. On the surface, it sounds like a good idea. You train moderate Syrian rebels to fight the extremists within Syria, and maybe you win, except who are those moderate rebels, and can we trust them?
Yeah, it's hard pulling the various groups apart. There is some leadership within the Free Syrian Army that we already have contacts with. I would suggest our intelligence resources and some of the folks who have been watching this very closely, both inside and outside of Syria, can help us connect with those. And the training and equipping potentially is going to be done by more than U.S. forces, I think, if the president pulls this coalition together. There's going to be a lot of other multinational partners contributing to this operation.
Before we get into the multinational partners, I wanted to ask you, too, about this idea of airstrikes over Syria, because supposedly that's going to be brought up in the president's speech tonight, too. It's kind of a scary proposition because the government of Syria has air power of its own.
Yes, they do. And it is a scary proposition. I think that's why the president has delayed in terms of addressing what he might or might not do. But right now, we've got some areas within Syria that are ungoverned spaces. And I think when you have key targeting potential, when you have more intelligence about what's going on the ground, then you have to be able to develop a plan that might strike freely. And I think that will be part of the president's observations tonight when he gives his presentation.
All right. Well, let's talk about possible allies in this war against ISIS. Yeah. Several countries have been named as possible allies: Iraq, Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Turkey. The New York Times labeling some of them, particularly Turkey and Saudi Arabia, as reluctant partners. So what are the challenges in getting them to agree to such an alliance? And can we trust them?
Yeah, and I think you can. It's coalition building. It's ugly. We've done it before, and again, I'll go back to what the president said the other day about how we have learned an awful lot in the last 12 to 13 years of combat in Iraq and Afghanistan. One of the things we've learned is how to blend various elements of coalitions with their various national caveats. We've also been able to blend conventional and special operating forces along with air power. So all of those things are going to contribute to the fight. There are going to be some challenges. Turkey is one. I mean, certainly they have some of their diplomatic and consulate staff being held hostage by ISIS. And at the same time, the Kurds in this region, which we've seen be so successful near Erbil and Duhok, also extend along the southern line of, the northern line of Iraq and into Syria. And there is concern by the Turks that should the Kurds get a little bit too frothy, as it were, that they might do things that the Turkish government doesn't like. They've been dealing with the PKK threat, another terrorist organization, a Kurdish terrorist organization, over the last few years. So there is concern in Turkey about a couple of issues. I'd also include, by the way, on your list of potential contributors, as the president came out of the NATO summit last week, I'm sure he generated a lot of support from many, many NATO countries. There were several named: Poland, Estonia. All of those forces have very good special operations capabilities. They've developed those over the last 10 years in partnership with us in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Interesting. So I'm just curious, as a military guy, what do you want to hear President Obama say tonight?
Well, I want to hear all about the coalition building. That's a critical piece. Having spent a lot of time in this part of the world over 3 years, I know we cannot do this alone. We will not be accepted because we are both culturally and linguistically challenged. So we've got to get support from an entire international community. That's critical. I think he's going to give some freedom of maneuver to the combatant commander, General Austin, on the ground to determine where the key intelligence is. And if we find key intelligence on strategic or operational targets, he's going to give them permission to strike those. And I think the criticality of training, additional training to Iraqi forces now that the government has advanced in Baghdad, as well as some of the Free Syrian forces, are all going to be part of what I'm looking for. But the most important thing I'm going to look for as a former member of the military is he's got to prepare the American public that this is going to be a long campaign. This is not something that can be solved in a week, in a month, or even a year. This is going to take a lot of concentrated effort to eliminate this evil.
Lieutenant General Mark Hertling, thanks so much for your insight. Always appreciated.
Thank you, Carol.
Still to come in the newsroom, the NFL